I just want to get right into it, so I'm going to go straight to the video.
Brigitte Harris was born on June 6, 1991, in Staten Island, New York, to father Eric Goodridge and mother Lucy Ann Harris. Both were immigrants from Liberia. Eric was a busy man, running several businesses, including an import-export company, a record store, and a travel agency. Lucy already had 2 children before she met Eric. Together, they had 4 more, including Brigitte. But things were complicated from the start. When Brigitte was born, Eric denied being her father. Soon after, he left Lucy and the 6 kids for another woman. Now a single mother, Lucy struggled to raise her children. In 1983, when Brigitte was just 2 years old, Lucy traveled back to Liberia for her grandfather's funeral, leaving her children in the U.S. But without a green card, she wasn't allowed back into the country. The 6 children lost their mother, had to bounce between foster homes. Eventually, they ended up living with Eric and his new wife. Then in 1990, Eric accepted a temporary job in Liberia, which kept him away for months. Meanwhile, his new wife grew tired of waiting and filed for divorce. The kids were sent to live with their aunt and grandmother in Providence, Rhode Island. But life with their grandmother was no better. In fact, it was a nightmare. Their grandmother was described as cold and cruel. She didn't hide her favoritism, treating the 6 kids like servants while her own children did nothing. Punishment in that house was brutal. Brigitte was often beaten for things she didn't even do. Once, Brigitte got blamed for not flushing the toilet. Grandma dragged Brigitte by the collar, stripped her naked, and beat her so badly with a stick that it left her skin raw and bleeding. But Grandma wasn't satisfied with the beating. She mixed red hot pepper, water, and flour into a paste, then rubbed it into Brigitte's open wounds. The little girl screamed in pain, but Grandma didn't stop. She poured the burning sauce into Brigitte's private areas. Another time, in a fit of rage, Grandma threw a phone at Brigitte, hitting her in the mouth and breaking her front tooth. When Grandma took Brigitte to the hospital, she claimed Brigitte had fallen off her bike. 4 years later, in 1994, 12-year-old Brigitte and her siblings finally reunited with their mother in Liberia. Brigitte was hopeful. She longed for the love and warmth she never truly felt. She thought things would be different now, that her mother would finally show her the care she had been missing. But within 2 weeks, her hopes were crushed. Brigitte quickly realized her mother wasn't the savior she had dreamed of. When Brigitte confided about the abuse she had endured for years, her mother didn't care at all. Then, the civil war raged around them, and by 1996, things became unbearable. Somehow, their mother managed to secure documents proving her children were American citizens, and they were airlifted back to the United States. Back in America, Brigitte was tossed around from relative to relative before ending up in a women's shelter. For years, she went back and forth between Liberia and the U.S., never finding a place she could truly call home. Finally, in 2007, she got her own apartment. She worked as a security guard at JFK International Airport, had new friends, and no ties to her past, especially her father, Eric. She wanted nothing to do with him. But peace didn't last. Not long after Brigitte settled into her new life, her father, Eric, called. She had spent years trying to escape him, and now he was back, forcing his way into her life again. Eric's health was failing, and in June 2007, he returned to the U.S. to seek better medical treatment. He moved in with Carlene, one of Brigitte's sisters. Carlene urged Brigitte to let go of the past, to forgive him. She tried to convince Brigitte that their father had changed and wanted to make things right. But Brigitte knew better. To the outside world, Eric was a respected businessman, a successful entrepreneur running several ventures. But behind closed doors, he was a monster. Brigitte could never forget what he had done to her. From the time she was just 3 years old, Eric had subjected her to unimaginable horrors. It started as a game. He would bounce her on his knee, pretending to play. But soon it became something sinister. He brutally entered her body. By the time she was 4, he forced her to use her mouth. This left her scarred for life. The abuse continued through her childhood, growing more violent as she got older. It wasn't just physical, it was psychological torment. When Brigitte was in Liberia, he even hid her passport to prevent her from leaving, trapping her in his control. Brigitte tried to seek help. She confided in her mother, Lucy, about what Eric had been doing to her. But instead of protecting her, Lucy chose to tell a pastor. This so-called man of God, trusted by the community, turned a blind eye. He didn't want to get involved. Eric was too respected, too powerful. Nobody wanted to believe the truth. The last time Eric tried to attack her, Brigitte fought back. She was older now, stronger. She resisted with everything she had, and in the middle of the struggle, he had the audacity to ask, "What's wrong with you?" That was the breaking point. Brigitte left Liberia for good, determined to cut him out of her life. But the guilt never left her. She felt haunted by the thought of leaving her younger sister behind. Deep down, she suspected Eric was abusing her too. When she tried to talk to Carlene about it, Carlene always changed the subject. And now, here he was, back in the U.S., trying to mend the broken pieces of a relationship he had shattered. But some wounds don't heal, and Brigitte wasn't ready to forgive the man who had stolen her childhood. Brigitte's sister Carlene invited her over for a family dinner. She mentioned that their father would be there and said he wanted to apologize. Reluctantly, Brigitte agreed. It wasn't an easy decision. After everything she'd endured, facing Eric again was the last thing she wanted. But for some reason, she went. It took her 2 hours by subway and ferry to reach Carlene's home in Staten Island. When Brigitte arrived, the moment she walked through the door, anger and disgust hit her like a wave. There, sitting in front of her, was Eric, bouncing her young niece on his leg, just like he used to do when she was a child. The sight was like a slap to the face. Memories of her own trauma came rushing back. And then Eric said something that pushed her over the edge. He announced that he wanted to take Carlene's daughter back to Liberia with him. Brigitte was furious. There was no way she was going to let that happen. She loved her nieces and couldn't stand the thought of them going through the same horrors she had endured. She confronted Carlene, demanding to know how Mother could even consider allowing this. But Carlene didn't see things the same way. In her mind, Eric was just an old, sick man. She didn't believe he was still capable of doing what he had done to them as children. But Brigitte wasn't convinced. She couldn't shake the flood of flashbacks, memories of the abuse she suffered at the hands of Eric and even other relatives. He had to be stopped. But how? Brigitte thought about going to the police, but after doing some research, she learned that the statute of limitations had expired. There was nothing they could do. Desperate for a solution, she scoured the internet, searching for any story that might give her an idea. That's when she came across the case of Lorena Bobbitt, the woman who had famously cut off her husband's penis after suffering years of abuse. Suddenly, everything clicked. Brigitte knew what she had to do. On Wednesday, July 25th, 3 days before she would see her father again, Brigitte set up a camcorder, aimed it at herself, and pressed record. Her voice was calm but serious. "My name is Brigitte Harris, and this is the story of my life. Well, not the whole thing, it would take too long. Just a summary of why I'm doing what I'm about to do, why I feel it has to be done, why I waited this long to do it. And so you can judge me. But before you do, get the whole story. That's all I ask." A few days later, Brigitte invited her father to her apartment. She wanted to confront him, to tell him that what he had done to her as a child was not okay. She needed him to hear her pain, to know she hadn't forgotten. Eric had spent years trying to convince her that his abuse was normal, that all fathers did this to their daughters. But she knew better now. She started by bringing up the first time he had hit her. Eric didn't deny it. Instead, he sneered. "How do you even remember that? You were only 3 years old, you sick fuck." Brigitte's anger rose. He wasn't surprised by what she was saying. He didn't even try to hide it. Brigitte brought up the time when he forced her to use her mouth at the age of 4. Once again, Eric didn't apologize. He made excuses, brushing it off like it wasn't a big deal. Then, Brigitte told him the real reason she had invited him over. She begged him not to take her nieces to Liberia. She knew exactly what his intentions were, and she wasn't going to let it happen. "If you really want to make amends," she told him, "this is your chance. Leave them alone." But Eric denied everything, claiming he had done nothing wrong. Brigitte lost control. She started screaming, calling him a liar, telling him he knew exactly what he had done. She realized in that moment that nothing was going to change. Her nieces were in danger, and she had to protect them. While Brigitte stood there encouraging herself, Eric stood up and took a step forward. Instinctively, Brigitte grabbed her pepper spray and sprayed it directly into his eyes. He stumbled, and they struggled. They fell to the floor, wrestling as Eric tried to overpower her. But somehow, he passed out. Brigitte scrambled to her feet, panicked and breathless. She needed a way to restrain him. Searching around the apartment, she found a pair of handcuffs, a joke gift from friends who had teased her about working as a security guard. Without hesitation, she snapped them onto his wrists. Suddenly, Eric was acting like he could not breathe. Brigitte thought he was dying, so she splashed water on him, calling his name, trying to wake him up. He opened his eyes and started screaming. Terrified that the neighbors might hear, she decided to gag him. She grabbed a towel, stuffed it into his mouth, and secured it with duct tape, leaving just enough space for him to breathe. Brigitte was in a state of pure panic now. Her mind raced, filled with flashes of what she had endured as a child. This had to end, now. She couldn't let him hurt anyone else. She pulled down his pants. At first, she tried to use scissors, but they didn't work. Desperate, she remembered the scalpels she had bought online a month ago. She retrieved them and pressed her knee against his windpipe to keep him still. With one swift motion, it was done. To her surprise, there wasn't much blood. Brigitte knew the doctors would try to reattach it if they found it, and she couldn't let that happen. She carried the severed organ to the stove, turned on the flames, and watched as it burned. The smell of charred flesh filled the apartment, snapping her back to reality. Shaken, she turned off the stove, wrapped the burnt remains in a paper towel, and called 911, saying, "A man bleeding to death on 3rd floor of the house." After providing the address, she hung up before giving any further details. Realizing she couldn't stay there, Brigitte gathered the scalpels, pepper spray, scissors, and a few pills, stuffing them into her backpack, and ran away. Police and paramedics arrived at the scene and immediately attempted CPR on Eric Goodridge, but it was too late. He was pronounced dead on the spot. Upon closer inspection, they discovered something shocking. Eric's penis had been cut off. A scalpel was found beside his body, which investigators determined to be the weapon Brigitte had used. However, that wasn't the cause of death. At 55, Eric could barely walk, plagued by infected keloids on his legs, as well as kidney stones and a failing liver. He was gagged with a towel secured by duct tape, leaving his nose and mouth partially exposed. But over time, the gag had shifted, causing the towel to be drawn further into his throat. This gradually cut off his airway, leading to asphyxiation. As officers combed through the apartment, they found 2 handwritten notes left by Brigitte. One read, "He wrecked my life." The other said, "At first, I blamed myself. Now I know it's not my fault." Meanwhile, 911 dispatchers attempted to contact Brigitte again. When they reached her, she calmly agreed to come to the station, saying she was only a block away.
Brigitte Harrison suffered a lot as a child. So did her sister Carlene. But you can see that 2 people can go through the same situation and view the situation totally different. Brigitte did not want to have anything to do with her father. She is like when she left everything behind and she just wanted to go on with her life. But then her sister Carlene forgave her father, was saying that, we can move forward from this, and she allowed that man, which was a predator, into her household with her daughter, knowing what he had did to her sister as well as herself. She still allowed this predator to come into her household and to allow him to be holding her daughter on her lap. So when Bridget seen that, she snapped, more or less. So you may be thinking, well, she had time, she left, that, went home, she planned this out. In a way, yes, but in a way, no. Her mind was still in that chaotic state of, I need to protect my niece, because she see that her sister wasn't going to protect her niece. She see that she couldn't call the police on him because it was past the time that she could report the abuse that he did to her. So in her mind, she was like, what I need to do is stop him. Her intentions was not to kill him, but her intentions was to take away the object that she seen him using to hurt her. She wanted to remove his penis so he could never SA another child again, anyone again. That's her chaotic mind state. And so that's why she did what she did. But unfortunately, her father ended up passing away because of that. I'm going to read, because the sister is saying that she forgave the father. I want people to stop hiding behind God, because a lot of people, they don't speak up because they're in the church, or they're talking about, oh, you need to forgive this person, you need to do this, you need to stop hiding behind God. And this is why it's very important to read the Bible for yourself and not allow people to use the Bible to make you feel guilty. Use God or use the Bible to make you do something that you would not normally do, or that is wrong, or don't feel right in your heart. Read the Bible for yourself. I'm going to read 2 scriptures to you. Matthew 6:14 through 15, ESV. For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Colossians 3:13, ESV. Bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgive each other as the Lord has forgiven you, so you always must forgive. And when it comes to forgiving has absolutely nothing to do with that person who hurt you for whatever reason. Forgiveness has nothing to do with that person. Forgiveness is between the relationship between you and God. Just like when you do wrong, you want God to forgive you. And so in order for that relationship to stay open, if someone else hurt you and do something wrong, you forgive that person. That helps you get rid of any anger you might be holding towards that person. That helps you release any feeling of guilt that you might have, like maybe this was my fault, or I should have did this, or I should have. It helps you relieve all that, to get away from all that. That is what forgiveness does. Forgiveness is more for you and has nothing to do with that other person. There's a word called reconciliation. That is when you reconcile with someone. They may have done you wrong, and you say, okay, I'm going to forgive you, and we can build a relationship. Forgiveness is not that. Forgiveness is, I'm going to let all this anger, I'm going to let all this go, all this bad feeling, all this stuff, because if you hold on to it, it can cause hate. It can cause you to do things you shouldn't do, which will separate you from God. So it's more about your relieving the anger and the guilt from yourself and having a better relationship with God. You never have to, if you forgive a person, you never have to see that person again. If you forgive a person, you never have to talk to that person again. If you forgive a person, you don't have to be a part of their life, and they don't have to be a part of your life. That's what people need to understand about forgiving. Forgiving is not about, oh, we need to make up now. Oh, I forgive you. Let's make up now. Oh, I forgive you. Let's go out to dinner. Oh, I forgive you. You can come into my house. We're going to build a new relationship. That has absolutely nothing to do with forgiveness. Forgiveness is about you releasing all that anger, all that hate, whatever negative feeling you have, releasing that and building a relationship with God. That's what forgiveness is about. You don't have to reconcile with anyone that hurt you if you don't want to. You don't have to build a relationship with anyone that hurt you. That has nothing to do with it. Just if you feel like Brigitte did, that I don't want to have nothing to do with my father ever again, she was right by that. That has nothing to do. God is not going to look at her and say you're a bad person because you don't want to have a relationship with your father. None of that. As long as she can, like, okay, I forgive him. I understand what he did. That's his problem. I forgive him. I'm going to move on with my life. She's okay with that because of her sister bringing this man back into their lives, and she and Brigitte thinking about what can I do to protect my nieces. Carlene put Brigitte in a situation that made her end up in jail, because if she would have never brought that man back into their lives, if she would have never brought that man into her niece's life, into her daughter's life, knowing what he did to her, knowing what he did to her sister, then Brigitte would have never been in that mind state, that chaotic mind state, to be able to do what she wanted to be able to do what she did to him. So what women and people, especially the people in the church, they need to wake up. A sin is a sin, and if a person is going around doing this to their kids, doing this to other kids, they're being a predator, they need to be held accountable. This isn't something that you just sweep under the rug. They need to be held accountable. But for some reason, the church people want to protect these type of people because, like I said in other videos, this is running rampant in a lot of churches where SA is being done by the preacher, been done by the ushers, been done. You know, almost every male, I'm not gonna say every male, but a lot of males in church are doing this. The women know, the other men know, but no one want to say anything. It has to become more normal to speak up and to speak out than it is to hide and protect these people. Why would you want to allow a person like that to continue hurting other children just because they have money? That's why I don't get up and get excited about, oh, who got money or how much money this person. If they don't have morals, the money, it doesn't matter. How much money they have or don't have doesn't matter. Without morals, you see what a lot of these people, they have money, or they had prestige, or they had clout, or they had this, or they had that, and so the people look the other way. I can't live in a chaotic society like that, or I cannot be around chaotic people. You allow all this predator behavior to go on just because this person got money, just because this person got a title, just because the person got a name. That's chaotic to me. That would never settle in my mind. That is just so chaotic to me. All kind of anxiety, I would never feel comfortable around that type of person. And I know that person's doing that. That's not in me to be okay with knowing a person is hurting a child, a helpless child, someone who can't even speak up or take care of themselves. But so many people do it and feel no type of way. They go on about their life like no big deal. So what? As long as I'm getting my needs met, I can care less what this man is doing to that child. As long as my rent getting paid, I can care less what that man is doing to my child. That's how a lot of women think. Oh, he's paying my bills, so I'm gonna let him, sneak out of my bed and go into my child's bed. I'm gonna be okay with that because he's paying my rent. Oh, how much money is he donating to the church? Oh, okay, so I'm gonna look the other way to all the things that he's doing. Oh, he's making my company a lot of money. Okay, I'm not gonna say anything because I want that money to keep coming in. That's the mentality. I can't trust you if you know this going on, but you say nothing. I definitely can't trust that person if I know what they're doing, because if they're willing to do any and everything against a child, what do you think they'll do to you? And then if the people are willing to look the other way at a person that's doing all this and that to a child, how much loyalty they're gonna have towards you? That is so chaotic to me. That just goes past my mental state. I can't even think past that. I don't get it. And the sister knew what he was doing, and still brought that predator in the household around his daughter, and was going to allow her father to take her daughter back to Africa. It's like, really? Do you not care about your own child because you want to forgive your father? Okay, forgive him, but don't let him around your child. Forgive him, don't let him in your house. Forgive him, and definitely don't let him take your child back to Africa, and where you don't even have any way to help your own child because she's in a whole nother country. And I truly feel that Brigitte should not have went to jail because of all the things that she went through, knowing what this man was going to do. Yes, he ended up dying, but like I said, she wasn't trying to kill him. She was just trying to stop him. And I'm not for violence.